I love that vibe. Last but not least is Samantha Soto. In an alternate universe, Samantha Soto is Doctor Who's faithful companion, traveling through time with him and constantly rearranging furniture on TARDIS. Time and relative distance in space. TARDIS. In this one, she's a professional daydreamer, a wife, and a mom to two not-so-little humans and a golden retriever named Tennant. She has written two best-selling books, Before Ever After and Love and Gravity, which have both been internationally published by Random House. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our three speakers for today. And we will begin with Mr. A.E. Patawaran. Yes.
Hello, good afternoon. The topic is rather very broad, and I've been thinking about what the role of a writer really is in society or in the world. And you know, fortunately or unfortunately, my background has been in such a way that writing is like a small part of the process. It's almost like an executionary detail. Most of my writing is drawn from a whole lot of other things. I started in advertising, and in advertising, the writing is really just almost incidental. It's always the big idea that counts. Sometimes the big idea doesn't even require words. Sometimes the big idea just, in advertising, in advertising particularly, the snappier the word, the shorter the words, the snappier the statement, the better it is, right? So you're always told, don't write too much, don't overwrite, don't overthink, just let, that's what I learned, parang you just sort of like, let it happen. That's what, you're pushed by the big idea. But I think the context also is, now that there's social media and self-publishing is sort of like the norm now, there are many things that an author is believed to have to do now that they didn't used to before. But if you look back in history, it's like we're almost like doing the very same thing that they did back then. I mean, there was a time when books, I don't know how it started, but I think in the 18th or 19th century, parang there was a phase in the book, in the history of the book, when it became such an elevated product that a lot of people did not want it to be a commodity, meaning a book should not be sold. A book should be able to fly off the shelf on its own. Books are looked for, people hunt for the books rather than a salesman going around and telling you, buy this book, buy this book. So, and I think that's why we can talk about Louis Vuitton. You know, I can be a salesperson for Louis Vuitton or Hermes, and I can talk to you about all the beautiful products, the history and all of that, and you won't cringe. But if I'm a book author and I talk to you about my books, parang you feel a little, parang sobrang self-promotion, you know what I mean? I'm a social media freak. I love social media, I love Instagram, but, and I've been asked by a lot of people to have like an author page, you know, to have a whole page, a whole account devoted to just my books, but parang not that I don't want to do it, but I'm just too lazy to do it, and parang feeling ko, I'm not really my books, you know, my books are just a part of me, and I think that books are supposed to pull you rather than, you know, like we hunt for books, right? So like in my Instagram account, I don't just talk about my books. I rave over other people's books. I rave about old books, new books, and all of that. And so, because for me, the whole idea of social media is like a hunting ground. So I follow people from whom I might have an idea about what to read or what books to buy next. because I think that books need to pull you. It's either the cover or the idea or the background of the author can also play a big role in your choice of the books that you want to buy. um, but I think, however, that the whole writing process is like a whole life, you know what I mean? Parang it goes into whatever, you know, like for instance, my two books, I didn't write them to sell. I mean, I wrote right here, right now, thinking that books didn't sell anymore. You know, I thought that I wrote it in defense to what everybody was saying, that people don't read anymore, people don't like long articles, people don't like words. And when I started to write it, I didn't write it as a book, I wrote it only to sort of like rebel against that idea. In fact, I think I wrote it in the middle of a depression. I wrote, social media is a big part of Hainaku because I never ever in my whole life thought that I could write poetry. I mean, I wrote poetry when I was a kid, but only for play. But I never ever imagined myself to be a poet, not even comfortable being called a poet now. But in social media, you know, like when Instagram was starting, everybody was saying that it has to be one word only. Hashtag one word, and if you don't do that, you're not a good Instagrammer. But I couldn't do that because I'm a Proustian writer. I love long sentences, so that's when I started experimenting with poetry because I'm so tired of just doing like a simple caption. So, and that's when one thing led to another. And before I knew it, not that the poems in my book are drawn from my Instagram posts. A few were taken from Instagram, but like practically 90% were written for the book. But so I think I think if you were to ask me that in the face of social media, I don't think we're really changing because like in 1960s, I'm just reading a book now. It's called The Party of the Century. It's about this black and white ball that was thrown by Truman Capote in 1966, in November 28, 1966. But like the whole book is like telling you exactly what life was like back then, especially in the upper crust of New York society. And apparently in 1966, everything that's happening to us now happened in 1966. That's when the youth quake started, when all of a sudden, you don't have to be 50 years old to land on the pages of Vogue or Town and Country or some of those. It's like, in those times, but you have to have lived a life in order to be featured in a magazine. Back then, if you're young, if you're 20-something, you're usually just a model or, a mannequin doing the clothes. But most of the features were women 50 and up. So you have people like the Duchess of Windsor, who was already, how old at the time? Bailey, who was already a matron of society. But in 1966, everything changed, because that's when people started thinking that you have to be young. And that's exactly what's happening to us now. So I think that the role of the writer is always the same. You're like a chronicler. According to F. Sunil Jose, the writer is sort of like a keeper of the memory. He says that it's important that a writer or any artist for that matter should accept that we are all egocentric, that we're doing it primarily for ourselves. But the task of the writer is to have that bigger self, meaning I'm me, but I live on my street, I'm from Las Piñas, I'm a Filipino, I'm Asian, I'm part of the world. So you make yourself bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not so much because you want to sell, but because, so that whenever, say you're writing a memoir, when you write, I, me, myself, in the memoir, a lot more people can see themselves. Like when they read it aloud, when they say, I am a Filipino, they see themselves in your shoes. So parang that's one of the things, di ba? But and also I think that the role, you know, like I come from also I've also been an editor since 1990, in the mid 90s. From advertising, I moved to Lifestyle Asia, where I was like very young, but parang because we were a small team, parang I was already given a hand in actually putting the whole magazine together. I was like a young editor. But even there, I thought it was the happiest time of my life because I was like just doing stories. I was just writing most of the things. I was just dreaming up things and then making them happen on the page. But writing again is like a small process. When I interview people for my newspaper or my magazines back then, I always ask them what they think is menial. Because a lot of writers come to the editorial room thinking that writing is about pounding away on your keyboards or at the time your typewriter. But that's really just a small part of it. It's like sort of like collating everything. And like there was a one interview, parang I asked one of the interviewees, which artista do you hate the most? And she said, Gretchen Barreto. So I said, what if we have a project in which you have to hold the hem of her gown as she crosses the street so we can photograph her. And then he went into he couldn't accept that he didn't really say it exactly this way, pero parang I didn't go to college to do that. But I said, you don't, and then so like I explained to him that, you know, you don't do it because for Gretchen Barreto, you do it for the picture. You do it because you want to achieve that whatever execution you want with her. In fact, I learned, for instance, to be sort of like a PR person on the shoot because I need to manage also the energy level. So that I can sense, for instance, when people are getting tired, that's when I order coffee, that's when I get people into conversation because you want to make the story happen and everybody has to play their part. So again, all these little small things contribute to what you are doing, which essentially will be recorded on the page. If we're talking about writing an article in a magazine or something. But let's say a novel or a memoir or poetry, that also involves a whole lot of things that usually have nothing to do with writing, that involves a lot of thinking, it involves a lot of melancholy, it involves a lot of people that you need to see, a lot of traveling, for instance, a lot of expanding your universe, a lot of seeing things, tasting things, and everything. So, in fact, in my book, Right Here, Right Now, I've been emphasizing that you have to live life in order to be a writer. And I think that in social media, we should be able to also sort of like practice that, so that your social media is not just a curated bits of your life, but also a glimpse into what humanity. You know, me, I'm a fan of Instagram because I could see changes in the way we think, things that we love because of Instagram. And I think that we can really put social media on our side in our search for, because you know, parang a lot of people think that people parang selling your book is like selling your soul. I mean, that's because of the purism, whatever. But even J.D. Salinger, who sort of like broke away from mainstream, who didn't like the idea of talking to people, of being interviewed and all of that, I read in a book that he was stalked by this teacher who told him that it's not fair that you wrote this book and you made a fan of all of us and now you're hiding away from us. And I just want to know, are you still writing? are you still actively writing? And he said, what do you expect? I'm a writer. Of course I write. So he wasn't exactly averse to readers. He just didn't want to overpower his books. That was just his point. He didn't want to be the story. He was only the storyteller. I only have 1 minute to go, so I think I'll wrap it up with, again, parang I think it's very important that when you write, parang you really write from the heart, that you do it for purposes other than selling it. Thank you.
I'm going to call on Sam Soto to be the next speaker.
Hey guys, before anything else, I'd like to point out one thing that was left out in my bio. Hi, I'm Sam, and I'm a certified hermit and introvert. So anyone who knows me will probably tell you that I'm the last person who should be in a panel talking about promoting your books or self-promotion. In fact, to be honest, when I got the invitation to be a part of this panel, I kind of went into an anaphylactic shock because I'm as allergic to self-promotion, to putting myself out there as my husband is to alimango and shrimps. So my chest literally constricted when I found out what the topic was about. Parang gusto sabihin, pwede bang iba na lang yung topic? Or pwede bang online na lang yung panel? Something where I can hide behind the screen. So yun, my first reaction was really to say, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to stand in front of all of you. I don't want to stand in a ballroom and torture myself and you. You see, I was the person way back when, I won't date myself, but way back nung wala pa masyadong cellphone. I refused to get a cell phone when they were offering it in the office. As in, sabi ko, no way, I don't want a cell phone. Parang, in this day and age, hindi ka magsa-cellphone. How? But I literally didn't want one until they forced me to get a unit from the office. I was also the person who did not have any form of social media at all until my books came out. Kailangan eh. But before that, no Facebook, no nothing. And I am the person who gets anxiety standing in a ballroom like this today. But then, I started thinking, I realized that the very reason I shied away from this panel was probably the very reason this topic should be discussed. It dawned on me that a lot of writers are probably like myself. Aminin, sino yung mga introvert dyan? Aminin safe place, no judgment. And it's not a coincidence that writers are introverts, that we prefer to be by ourselves, that we're comfortable being by ourselves. It's because it's almost part of a job. It's like a job requirement, di ba? Writing is a solitary activity. Wala kang katabi pag nagsusulat ka, di ba? You're alone. And our writing cave, whether that's a corner of our bed or a corner table at Starbucks or whatever, that's our safe zone. That's our happy place. That's where we can let our thoughts roam free. And we're not afraid of being judged, we're not afraid of criticism, so we can be fully ourselves. So that's exactly how I felt when I was writing my first novel, Before Ever After, in my little favorite table by the banyo of Starbucks Katipunan, So that was my writing cave, that was my happy place, that's where I could be. I wasn't a mom, I didn't have to be a wife, that wasn't my role. My role was simply to be the mother of this book. So, but everything changed the moment I typed the end, in ways that I couldn't even imagine. My first taste of venturing outside the safety of my little cocoon, of my little writing cave, was when I decided that I wanted to have the book published. And I had to, of course, venture out and tried to find a literary agent in New York. So that's when I realized my role shifted from being the writer of this book. I was no longer the book's writer, but I was the book's champion. I was the book's sole champion. There was no one else on my side. There was no one else going to look for an agent for me. And when you look for a literary agent, it's literally like looking for a job. It's like you're applying for a job. You're writing a letter, and in 3 to 4 paragraphs, you have to convince this person you've never met before. You know, you have to sell your book to them. You have to hook them and get them interested in your book. And the selling of the book didn't stop there, even when I found a literary agent. In fact, in many ways, it was the beginning of things. So I'm represented by Stephanie Rostan of the Levine Greenberg Rostan Agency. And if you look at the agency's website and check on their how to submit page, so if you're looking for an agent and you want to send your book, you have to go to that page. And when you see that page, well, at least when I saw it, it gave me a pretty good idea of what was expected as a published writer. So there's actually a submission form, and it asked questions, and I'll read them to you. So these are the questions in that submission form. Briefly summarize your idea, indicating what makes it unique and compelling. Briefly explain your qualifications and background for writing this book. What books on the same or similar topics have already been written? What makes your book different? Is there something about your position or background that will help a publisher in selling your book? For example, do you give speeches or appear in media? Are you affiliated with an organization that plans to purchase or promote your book? I was shocked. I was like, ha? Sasagutin ko yan? Parang marketing plan? Parang, ano ba yan? Diba? Parang, you know, parang first gate pa lang nakaka-tense na. So, and that was like a wake-up call for me. You know, I realized that, okay, hindi lang pala kailangan writer dito. You kind of have to have some kind of marketing savvy as well. So, after you get an agent, when I landed my book deal, hindi pa rin tapos yun. I realized that my role as the book's champion grew even more. My responsibilities increased. I was expected to put up a website. This is in my contract. I was expected to put up a website, join the world of social media, guest on blogs, radios, TV shows, etc. In other words, everything that I was allergic to, kailangan ko nang gawin. But that was the reality of the situation. My book wasn't going to sell itself. My last name was not Rowling, Meyer or Brown, di ba? I was not and am not a big fish. So, while my publisher did give me marketing and PR support, I was a D-list in a very, 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 very big pond. So if my book had any hope of making the tiniest splash, it was really up to me to make the connections, one reader at a time. So I realized that if I wanted people to read my work, I had to put myself out there and introduce my book to them. I couldn't be a stranger, and my book couldn't be a stranger. So one of the first things I did was set up a blog called The Slide Detour. So I took readers on weekly digital field trips, just like the main character in my book Before Ever After, who took the other characters in the book across Europe on a historical tour. So the blog, the intention was to give readers a flavor of the book, as well as to allow me to share my thoughts beyond the pages of my novel. Facebook and Twitter came next. Ito, I'll just share. Sa tayo-tayo lang naman. You can keep a secret, di ba? This is a super mega tita moment. Parang lola moment na nga. When I first set up Twitter, I was scribbling away, and my kids asked me, "What are you doing, Mom?" I said, "I'm writing drafts about what I'm going to tweet." What? Drafts? Parang ano ba yan? You just tweet what's on your mind. So, no, I can't. I have to revise. I have to give an answer. Mom, people don't even use punctuation on Twitter, no? Okay, all right. Sorry, dinosaur here. So, anyway, so the kids died laughing. 7 years later, I still don't know how Twitter works. But one thing I do know is if people take the time to tweet me, message me, tag me, email me, I will take the time to respond. So that's the biggest learning there. So this is essentially how a hermit like myself has come to make peace with the enemy that was social media. I know that I will never be the type of person to post every minute of my life. You would die of boredom if I did that. But I had to switch my way of thinking from social media as a selling tool to something that matched my sensibilities and my values. What turned me off kasi initially with social media is that I really found it so artificial and so invasive. It was like, I don't want to know what we had for lunch. And I don't want you to know what I had for lunch. Pero dati yan, ngayon nagpo-post na ako ng kape, things like that. My plants. I'm cool with that now. So what brought about that change? How did I make that shift in thinking, no? So I look back at my days as a young reader, long time ago. And when I was obsessed with David Eddings and Anne Rice, dating myself, really. And I thought about all the times that I would have loved to engage with them, but I couldn't. I mean, kapadala ka ng letter to our very efficient post office. That's a black hole, but that's a whole other panel. So there was no venue for that type of connection then. But luckily, today, there is. And best of all, it's a two-way street. And I discovered more than the act of, posting updates, what I had for lunch or breakfast. What I like best about social media is that it gives me the opportunity to interact with people I would otherwise never meet in my daily life, in my little writing cave in Parañaque. So social media, I learned, doesn't have to be artificial. If you share authentic things, you get authentic responses and create authentic relationships. Suddenly, you are no longer alone. You're no longer the sole champion of your book. You have readers who become real friends, who campaign for your book as passionately as you do, and even more passionately than any PR or marketing team could. You have a support system that cheers you on when things are going well and sends you virtual hugs and smiley faces and all that when things aren't going so well. And believe me, the roller coaster ride that writing and publishing is, you will need all the hugs, virtual or not, that you can get. So, while I am still a certified hermit, and this is our first annual meeting of the Samahan ng mga Hermit sa Pilipinas, I'm also a person who puts a lot of value in exchanging life moments with people who share my passion for stories, magic, love, and hope, even if it's only online. And sometimes, when I'm feeling extra brave, I can even be coaxed to climb out of my man cave and stand on a stage like this. I'll just send Anvil my therapy bill after. Thank you. Yes, Gary.
Hi, I have slides. Hi, my name is Mina. I am still primarily an author, and this is a panel about the changing role of the author. So I did all of that, what they were saying, the thing that happens when you've written a book and you've finished it and it's published and now suddenly you have to be the champion of your book. I realized that yes, we have to do that, or we get people to do it for us, but that's another difficult email to write or conversation to have with friends. It's really like something. Writing is just the beginning. Publishing really just forces us to do things that maybe that maybe we didn't want to do or didn't realize we could do. But the other thing that I did not like about marketing my books, I mean, marketing as many of us know it, is the more I did it for my books, the less I liked doing it for my books, the less I wanted to talk about my books. So I stopped. I got a lot of advice about marketing books, selling my own books, and then I got tired. It's probably the thing about having to deal with people, even on a virtual level. So I just stopped doing it and decided to, rather than sell or market, be part of something and contribute to something. So my presentation today and my talk is about what you could do if you don't want to do selling, which is be part of a community as an author. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is not all of my books. This is just the ones that fit nicely in a grid. But these are the books that I've written and published. I write romance. It's kilig, it's love, it's fun. So the kind of community that forms around these books, or the kind of community that I would join, you can imagine based on what the books look like. Next slide. The communities I'll talk about right now are three main communities that I'm part of. If you become active in writing communities, you can be part of a whole lot of communities, big or small. I'm part of probably a lot more than I can mention today, but I will talk about three that are the major ones. One is called #RomanceClass, and it is a major part of my life because I founded it. I shouldn't leave it behind, right? So it's a group of romance authors, of Filipino authors who write romance in English. So it's very specific. It started because of a class that I gave, and right now we have a website called romanceclassbooks.com just to list what everyone's doing, and I counted there are 78 listed authors there and over 150 published books. I am also part of Wattpad. So Wattpad started up after I got published. So I'm not one of those authors who is right now super popular on Wattpad because they got a following through their stories that ended up being published. No, I came in sort of in reverse. I published my books, tried to do the marketing, tried to find the readers for my books, discovered Wattpad, and created an account. But what I am there is something else. I will discuss that later. There's also another community which is international called WOC in Romance. That's Women of Color in Romance. That's an international community of authors of romance, not just Filipino, but pretty much anywhere in the world. Okay, so changing role of the author. I am an author, but to Romance Class, I am also a reader. I read the books that the authors in that community write. It used to be easy because in 1 year, 13 books were released. This year, as I said, over the years, over 150 books have been written, so now it's harder to catch up. But that's okay, that's good. I'm still committed to reading everyone. I'm also a mentor. At some point, everyone in the community mentors each other, but since I founded the community, I kind of need to be the mentor all the time. I'm also literally the moderator of the group on Facebook. So I'm literally a moderator. I'm also a publicist. Me speaking on the stage right now and mentioning Romance Class is part of that. I'm an event organizer. See, that's why I insisted on slides, because I like showing the pictures of the events like that. That was from our most recent event in April. We tried to bring together the authors and the readers into a space where normally we wouldn't have met, and then we enjoy the books together. There's pictures, there's unicorns apparently, there's books, there's merchandise, because the community tends to bring together artsy people, people who are into things, people who like to make things, people who like cute people, people who like performances. So we try to bring all of that. And part of my changing role as an author is to organize events like that. I'm also a stage director, so anything that happens on an event stage, I try to decide what happens. So we have our events, we try to have them twice a year, the next one is in October. So I'm planning that, and maybe we'll have something new. We're working on that right now. I'm also a bookseller. I mean, not a bookseller like how you own a bookstore and then you sell books, but like if someone asks me, I'm kind of into romance, I don't know what to read next. Aha! I will have a list for you. I will ask you who you are, what you're into, how are you feeling right now. Do you want to read a Filipino author? I can recommend easily something that might fit whatever you're feeling right now. And I'm also a cheerleader, so that means the success of someone in the community, we cheer on, I cheer on. So it's not always going to be me, it's going to be someone else, and that's part of it. Be happy for fellow authors. Next. In Wattpad, I'm totally different. In Wattpad, that's the thing that you realize when you join a new community. Is sometimes the community is just into something totally different. I write romance in English. When I joined Wattpad, the Filipino authors that were really super popular wrote in Taglish. They wrote teen fiction, they wrote it was really raw what teenagers are feeling, and at the time I wasn't a teenager. And the way I wrote was I don't post things raw. I write, hide it, edit it forever, and then release it when I think it's fine and clean. And that's not what that community is about. That community is about quick, raw emotion, fighting over feelings in the comments. That's what it's about. But what they needed me for apparently was advice. So that's the thing that I realized I could do for them, because by the time I had joined Wattpad, I was already publishing. I was published traditionally in the Philippines. I had tried digital publishing and self-publishing internationally, and that's what they needed me for. So if you go to my Wattpad account, you will see a list of my books, and then you will see my publishing advice. And my publishing advice has 362,000 reads. Any of my books will be like several hundred reads. They don't need my books. They need my advice. So, and then I realized, okay, I'm not gonna force it. This is what they need me for. So I give advice. And based on that, I was able to get 119,000 followers. Imagine that, it's an advice column that is in Taglish. And that's the the main thing of value in my Wattpad account. And every day, new people follow it, like it, read it, comment on it to this day, or share it with friends because they probably have a problem with their publisher. and I addressed it in a previous post. So that's what is useful to them, and that's what they read. So in WOC in Romance, that is an international community of authors that I sort of stumbled into because we're on Twitter, we're on social media, we interact with authors, not just from this country, but other countries. And the cool thing is we started reading each other's books. Because again, when you're part of a community, that's what you do. You try to, and especially if it's a book community thing, they started reading our books, we started reading their books, and now it's a community of mutual promotion and admiration. WOC in Romance is a site, it's also a website. It promotes romance books by women of color including trans women, all over the world. There are at least 12 new releases listed per week, new releases every week, and that means there's just hundreds of books, thousands even, and authors to support. They help us, we help them. They recently launched something on Patreon. If you're familiar with Patreon, it's a way to contribute monthly to a cause or an artistic or cultural cause that you believe in so that they can continue running. And I officially became a patron of WOC in Romance. So every month, my credit card gets charged, and then they get to keep their website up, they get to keep promoting romance books that normally wouldn't have the promotional capacity of a huge publisher. And then I was able to meet them because I recently went on a trip to LA. There's a famous bookstore. Well, it's an indie bookstore called the Rip Bodice. It's the only romance-centric bookstore, I don't know if in the world, but at least in the United States. I went there and authors hang out there. So on the day I went, I met a bunch of authors. So that's really cool. Okay, so that's just the summary of it. In summary, personal rules for joining communities and being an author in a community. Rules for myself, you don't have to do this, or you might be doing it a different way, but these are the rules that I tell myself. Be helpful. If you're going to be part of a community, you have to contribute something. You have to be a positive force, I think, in a community rather than whatever is not helpful. Another thing is know your place in that community. Sometimes you get to decide what your place is. Sometimes in the case of Wattpad, it was thrust upon me, and I had to accept it because that's what they needed. Sometimes you are to the community what they need, and that can be okay. Self, you don't have to be there all the time, but when you are, make it count. It can be stressful and can lead to burnout if you have to constantly feel that you have to be in all these places at once. Social media can be time-consuming. Just going to events can be time-consuming. You don't have to. If this is something you would like to do, you can choose how much time you can devote to it. But when you do spend the time, make it count. Make it worth your while. And also, golden rule, I'm always generous in the community toward people who have been generous toward me, and it's a cycle of love and people doing things for each other. It's just, that's just how, I think that's, the other thing that I do is, for a day job is build online communities in development, and that's part of it. A positive and running community needs people who are doing good things for each other. So that's something that I try to practice even in this thing called being an author in a community that kind of helps sell my books, but really just makes this whole marketing thing not marketing and easier for me to do and not something that I would not want to do. So you can ask questions, but this is a little bit of what I do as an author in the community. Thank you so much.
I think those are very concrete ways to get out there. I can just recap a bit. From AA, you must expand your universe. From Sam, be your own book's champion. Get out of your metaphorical cave. And from Mina, it's join and build communities. Now we're open to questions. Any questions? I see I thought at first it's going to be, they had so much confidence in us. They gave us a ballroom. But I see that there is interest in this particular topic. As a publisher and former literary agent, this is what I do day in and day out, sell the writer. So I'd be very interested in writers who are not afraid to sell themselves. Any questions? Yes, there's a gentleman in the middle, yes. Okay.
Hi.
Don't be shy.
I'd like to direct my question to Mrs. Guerra. I'm a teacher. I teach math and I teach a reading and writing extracurricular class on the side. Most of my students, they don't read. And they can read, but they don't really read books habitually. They don't write a lot. I wanna be honest. My impression with Wattpad is not entirely positive. I think I share that with a lot of people. I've tried reading some of the things in Wattpad, medyo hindi ko kaya. Not for me, I guess.
You're not the market.
Not the market, yes.
Skills
But
uniform.
I guess there is an impression that the kind of writing on Wattpad seems to lower the standard for literature. This is the impression
Of who?
of people I talk to.
Okay.
So I don't know how much of that is true given how it sells. So, but some of my students, they actually are part of the community of Wattpad. So I see it as good news, bad news. Parang, yes, at least they read, they write. Good news, they read, they write. Bad news, Wattpad lang. I want to be able to, it's not that I don't want to discourage them from writing on Wattpad or reading on Wattpad. I want to use it as a way to encourage them to expand out of that. The way that you said, Kanina, that you were published before entering.
So the question
So my question is, how can I help my students expand from that community outwards?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a thing that I get asked. I don't want to represent like the best of the Wattpad community necessarily. It's a huge community. They can speak for themselves. But as an educator and someone who is there primarily as someone people ask questions from, I think what I've observed that the great thing about the communities, the reading communities that form there, is that they can that might be of interest to you is they can become really critical and think critically about the stories that they read there. So that's the thing that you can latch onto. The way that they're so familiar with the story, the way that they can criticize something, the way that they call out cliches, the way that they absolutely know that they've read this before. That's something that I think is, those I think are the tools that you would want students to have anyway. What happens is they're so familiar with the stories, they're so familiar with the style, they're so familiar with the popular titles that the critical thinking and criticism that it's building up. So that's the thing that I like to tap into when I talk to them on that platform, because I know that this is not a shy community of people who just take whatever is there and read it without question. They question everything. So if anything, I'm not going to tell people how to teach writing, how to write. It is really, I do see it as a very raw form of writing. And sometimes years later, authors who posted their stuff on Wattpad do want their work edited. Some people walk away from it because they've let their feelings out, and that's it. I don't want to be the person who decides what's literary and if Wattpad is valid, but I really love how being active on Wattpad trains the young readers to question what they read, and that's something that you can use. So maybe build something from there, maybe direct them towards something you want them to read, and then see if they're as invested in it. Yeah.
Follow up. Okay.
Regarding that, since you know more about the community than I do, is there an outside book or novel that you can recommend for people who read in Wattpad that you think, oh, this is something that you will also
there's
like?
a chain. You need to know who they like. And then you can, it's like, if you like this, you will also like this. Because I noticed for me, for example, the Wattpad readers who end up reading my published books tend to have read a certain author in Wattpad. There's almost like a chain that when they're they like this teen author, and then when they're into more adult stuff, they're fine transitioning to my books. So I guess it's with everything, like the reading history of every person. You have to know what they like, so you kind of have to ask them what they're into, and then you'll need to find like what the next book is in that chain. And hopefully, and I'm sorry it's not more specific, but there it is, because if you look at if you look at what's popular, sometimes it's a genre, sometimes it's a particular trope. So then you can recommend something that you feel fits that or gives the same feelings, and then they can read that without problems, I think.
Another question. Yes. You want to defend one?
Hello, my name is Trisha. I am
Trisha.
also a writer, although not a book writer, but a fashion blogger. So, can I ask, how do you overcome writer's block? Because I am in the middle of writer's block. No matter how I try, I've lost all inspiration, and I am in the verge of ending it. That I even started it 4 years ago, so I don't know.
We'll ask everybody, starting from Sam, going down.
Okay. Is it on? Okay. I have to thinking about it. I actually don't believe in writer's block. Okay, that might not be a popular thought, but it's coming from my corporate life, where I had to go to work, and whether or not I felt like it. There's no choice. Also, like school, you kind of have to go to school whether or not you feel like it. Wala namang such thing as school block, except the rain maybe. But so I kind of approach writer's block that way. And I think to myself, I have an objective. I have a scene I have to write, and I will write it. Even if I have to delete that entire scene again tomorrow. I don't know how that translates so much into blogs. Although I did have a blog before, and I would have regular posts. So I was committed to that schedule. So what I would do is I would sit down knowing that that's what the delete button is for. Sometimes, kasi writer's block comes from the idea that what I have to write down has to be perfect in the first go. It's like you put so much pressure on yourself because of the history. Maybe you had a great performing post before, and then you feel that, oh my gosh, what I wrote before has to live, what I write now has to live up to what I wrote before, it has to be better, etc., etc. But you can only write what you can write that day. And you can always go back to edit it. So what I find is that writer's block is a creation of when we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect in that one instance. But yeah, that's what the delete button is for. So I don't allow myself to believe that there is such a thing as writer's block.
I also don't believe in writer's block because I work in daily newspaper, so I cannot afford writer's block. But there are certain tricks, sometimes it's really kind of, writing is always difficult. I thought when I was younger that, like when I started writing for a magazine, I said to myself, in 5 years, I'm going to get the hang of this. I can write an article in like an hour. It's never happened. It's always difficult to write. But I've learned certain tricks, like I noticed that it's easier for me to start maybe as a status update on Facebook. And then I just copy it. Because I realize that when I write on social media, everything just comes naturally. I don't even think it comes out of all the words just come out of me. So what I do now is like when I'm writing an article, for instance, I write first on the status update version, and then I don't really post it. I use it as my so then I don't start with a blank page because the blank page can be also very overwhelming. I've also experimented with other tricks. Like I would do automatic writing. I just write whatever I have in mind. It doesn't matter whether it makes any and it works for me. It's easier, it's out there. But the thing with writer's block is that you're practically good. You're really just overwhelmed with a blank page or starting over. But if the page is full, even if it's full of crap, you can fix it. Because that's what writing anyway is. Writing is really rewriting. So just get something on the page and then you get there.
Just change, maybe try a change in routine. If something used to work before and now it doesn't, change it to something more fun for you. It's okay to take a break. You can consider yourself on hiatus. It's okay. I'm telling myself that because I haven't written in like months. And I used to write every day, and now I'm on a break. But that's okay. Do something fun. Do something that refreshes you. Do something that inspires you. Watch things that are good. Read things that are good. Be inspired by fun things. And then maybe when you're ready again, like because after a while you'll miss the idea that you were writing all the time. Then think of maybe you need to do it a different way. Maybe if it's posts, maybe you need a different format of post. Maybe you need a different topic. Maybe you need just a different way of doing things. And then I think it will work because it is work. It's trying and trying and sometimes not liking what's there. But I think breaks will also help.
Questions? Yes, Dr.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin. This question is for each of the panelists. My question is, all of you are best-selling authors and very, very great writers, but right now not all great writers have best-selling books. So my question is, what do you think is that marketing skill or marketing plan that really worked for you so that as a great writer, you turn into best-selling authors? That's all.
Is there for you?
Meron ba?
I don't think that there's a formula. I mean, if there was, then we'd all be writing best-selling books, diba? I think the key thing is that when you set out to write, you don't say, I'm going to write a best-selling book, right? That shouldn't be the thing because, like, I've been asked should we write about the trends? What's the latest trend in writing? Should I write about vampires, mermaids, angels, fairies, or whatever? But the thing about writing a trend is that by the time you finish writing the book and getting it published and all that, the trend is over. Diba? So definitely, trend is out of that best-selling equation. Now, of course, it really helps if you have a lot of support, marketing-wise and PR-wise from your publisher or communities or whoever, diba? I mean, the more support and the more people know about your books, the better. But I don't think that immediately translates into a best-selling book because there have been books that have been promoted to death and probably for a brief moment they enjoyed its spotlight, but it wasn't sustainable in the long run because at the end of the day, the book that you wrote has to be good. It has to not do a standard. I'm not saying that there is this set standard, but a lot of readers out there are able to connect with your book, and that's ultimately how you'll get that traction. But word of mouth, people think, oh, it's good, it's good, it's good, because marketing and publicity will probably get you that first, that first run of the first books out of the door, but ultimately it's people recommending books, diba? That's how we find out of books. Uy, maganda rin yung ganyan, ay nabasa ko yung ganyan, diba? So I think so at the core, your book has to be good. Now, how to write a good book, that's another panel. See you next year.
I'm trying to play, but I was happy now that, I waited a long time before I wrote my book. I was in my 40s, in my mid-40s when I wrote Right Here, Right Now. although I've been always been commissioned to write books for other people, and I've always been writing for other people. I've been working for magazines and all of that. So in a way, my job is very marketing oriented because I work for a newspaper, read by hundreds of thousands of people and all of that. So I sort of like have like a feel of what people want as an editor, and I think that goes into the book. But I think that a writer has the number one marketing tool, which is the curiosity. I mean, we write because we're curious about the world. Writing is an exploration, right? So, parang it starts from when we were young and we were curious about the world and we talk to people and all of that. And it all, comes together. So when you're older, you realize that you have social charm. You have, you can interact with people, you understand people because you read a lot and you learn a lot from books. You learn a lot from looking at people's eyes, how they feel or what they want, what they desire. I think the whole idea of being a writer by itself is already like a tool for marketing. Of course, we need people like Anvil and the bookstore and all of that to get it out there. And I think a lot of books are not sold because they are not found. And when people say, I don't believe that people don't read anymore, even if most teachers, most marketers value that. Keep your articles short because people have no patience for long articles. 2 years ago, I was in a Singapore conference, and the conference was about long-form journalism. Apparently, the findings, the most viral articles are at least 5,000 words long. So it's not to do with everybody says it. As popular it is, the more viral it will get. So parang, I think the reason that the marketing, I think that the books just need to be found. So if you have articles, if you write from how you see the world, some people will always be able to relate to that.
I don't know how a book becomes a bestseller. And also, it's hard to make that as a goal because there's always someone who will sell more or another more best-selling book. So even that is hard to define. So I think it's more of setting the kind of goal that you can live with and the kind of goal that will really help motivate you and really decide what the book will be about and what you have to do. So sometimes it's not bestseller is not always a goal. It's one goal, but maybe you can set other goals as well. Just because, we write the best book that we can and hope that it gets to the right people.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Becca. I'm not a writer, but I am a teacher who pushed to the limit my student to come up with a very good write-up. However, I emphasize to them that when they write something, they get information, they have to see to it that they get the sources and the author as much as they can. That's how I teach my students. However, the internet nowadays is jam-packed with information with no authorship. And sad to note, our students nowadays are very dependent with the information from the internet na yun na nga walang masyadong authorship. So my question is, was there a point in your life that your work is specialized? Or, and if yes, how do you feel about it and how do you react with it? Thank you.
Plagiarize, no. Pirated, yes. So, I don't know if that's just as bad. No, so I have nothing to contribute to that. Not down
not sure about. I'm not very conscious of that. Sometimes I have people who post my book from a source that I think is not official, but I just don't mind them. Sometimes because I don't really know how to go about it. I don't know how to go after them. I don't know how to ask them to shut it down or what have you. But I think there's only a few. In most cases, people try to. I think that a lot of people don't credit the author because they find it, maybe they don't have the information. But because like a lot of people quote me. I mean, there are letters even in other countries where letters of schools that are sent to the parents with a quote under it from me, but they acknowledge me as the source.
There are publisher responses to plagiarism. Maybe you can answer this. But I guess as an author, yes, I have seen my work plagiarized online. This was early on. I tried not to. Again, it was me being part of a community of authors. So at the time, I decided that it wasn't my place to suddenly reveal myself as the lurker in this community and scare them away. But as I saw it, they weren't making money from it. I don't know, this was years ago. Years later, when I saw it happen again in Wattpad, very quickly, the users of Wattpad would recognize that it was my book, reported it, and within an hour it was taken down from the site. So again, an example of certain critical abilities and just knowing what to do. And there were policies in place, and then action was taken very quickly. So yes, I mean, there's a lot that we can teach kids, the students, how to deal with this and how not to do it. But there are students who do know what to do, and I owe them a lot because they're the ones who are active in the communities finding the instances of plagiarism.
Do you want me to answer? Okay. It's your dilemma. Being a teacher, I was a teacher before. There is a difference between plagiarism and copyright infringement. It's piracy. Infringement is punishable by law, and plagiarism isn't. Right? Although there's a moral consequence to it, then you are also in a country where you have a Supreme Court justice and a senator plagiarizing. So it's kind of tough to be in the shoes of a teacher, but when I was doing that, I was very strict. I would kill on site a plagiarized work. Students beware. I'm coaching your teacher. Yeah, so it's terrible for the person who is plagiarizing to be caught plagiarizing. It's death academically, and as a writer, it's absolute death. Though it's not punishable by law, if you're found out, you can forget about a career in writing. Because no publisher, for example, would want to be caught publishing a work that's not attributed to the correct author. So if you're thinking about it, don't do it. And you know, in this post-truth world, guess what? The truth comes out, nevertheless, and quite publicly. And I wouldn't want to be in the shoes of the person who might have plagiarized. So, you know, it's a long way to get to the best-selling work or to the good work, to not best-selling. But if it's your work, the satisfaction, having gotten there with your own merit is fantastic. So choose the hard road. It's the way to go. Questions? Yes. After him.
if I plan to write a book, how to have contact or connect to the publisher, or if I wish to publish my book, or authentication of my book, or how can I send my ideas?
You can mail it to us with a letter. Your letter should talk about the book, talk about yourself, tell us why we might be the publisher to publish your book. I would tell you, for example, is to know the kind of book you are writing and match that manuscript to the publisher.
Ma'am, ano po yan sa parang Yahoo?
Hindi po. You just go to our website, it's all there. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me this chance to express what I think about this forum. No? This is rather, I used to be a teacher too, English teacher in Mindanao, UP Mindanao, School of Health Sciences. But I was also a copywriter like Mr. Patawaran in Unilab. Mahirap po, technical eh. Mahirap mag-isip kasi English major ako. So sinasakyan ko yung technical information. Just like Mrs. Guerra, I also took units in DevCom. So I know how it feels, no? To feel for the community. Kasi it is, an educator and a communicator is an agent of change. Lalo ngayon, I think we have a role to play. No? I thought this is a very serious topic. No? Haba mukha ko nito. Changing role of the writer. Pero I guess, yeah, my question is, how will you situate, no? Somebody, sabi niyo walang batas, no? To punish people who infringe on intellectual rights, no? Di ba po meron? Kasi bawat school, I think, should give emphasis to intellectual property. Kasi nga, tama sabi ni Ms. Becca na I think we should also spearhead, no? Being a group of concerned citizens, being a group of concerned writers, on how to protect intellectual rights, no? Of people. I mean, yung mga taong creative ay hindi dapat gayahin. Kasi UP for one thing, no? Sa UP, the president put his foot down. This one person who submitted an entry in the photography contest was taking, public administration, graduate studies. And then I think he was stripped of his degree. I also did the same way to my students. Nahuli ko sila na gumagawa ng 2 identical business letters from Google, I don't know. Grabe, sa Amerika pa ang address. Sabi ko, ano ba kayo? Taga Mindanao kayo? Bakit sa Amerika pa? Halatang-halata kayo. Ang gagaling niyo pa naman. Talaga, sabi ko, you know who you are. I will thank all of you if you do the same thing again.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Hello, good afternoon.
Okay. Yes, sir. What's your question?
Okay, I would like to ask for advice on how you silence your own inner critic whenever you're writing, because there's this anxiety sometimes when I try to write my own fiction. There are many criticisms that are coming to my mind, as in it will not be part of those who will be on the shelves, that will be part of the bestsellers, or worst of all, not even be a classic, or it will not be original.
Okay, your question is how to silence the naysayer in you.
Yes.
Okay. Mina, then going that way naman.
Okay. Yeah, I feel you. I learned this the hard way, You cannot write and edit at the same time. You cannot. You should not. I used to. So which meant that I wound up writing 2 sentences in a day because I was always second guessing myself, right? So you have to separate those 2 activities. They say write in white heat edit in cold blood. So when you have a writing session, don't look back. Just dire-diretso lang. Write. Don't reread what you're writing. Do not allow yourself. Have that as a rule. Because you will only be tempted to write, I think I'll tweak this, and I'll tweak that, and then before you know it, one sentence, tapos na yung araw, di ba? So, what I do now, and that's what I used to do, for 3 hours in Starbucks, I produced one sentence, di ba? So, what I do now is that I write until the end of the book without looking back. And then when it's done, I set the book aside and I let it marinate. I like, hindi ko siya pinabansin. I do anything except read the book. That's when I get a chance to read other people's books. I watch movies, I do whatever, Candy Crush dati. Anything except look at that book. So, because that will give you the space to be able to come back to it and look at it with fresh eyes. This time, okay lang yung mga voices in your head na magsalita because they're there to let you see that book with a critical eye. But it should not be at the same time that you are writing it. So that works for me.
If I must sell my book, I have a chapter here called Voices in Your Head. Because it's part of the writing process. I think that you have to accept that you yourself, your own voice will tell you that maybe you're wasting your time, maybe you're not doing it right, maybe your English is terrible. Plus you have your mother, your father, your teachers, or your friends who might tell you the same thing, to make you doubt what you're doing. So I think you just have to accept it. Writing is like plunging into the abyss. It's really like that.
If you can identify what it is that worries you about what you've written, you can find a way to maybe address it. Like if it's the writing itself, maybe you need to take a class or look for a class. If it's just checking if what you've written is any good, maybe you can find someone who can read it who isn't you. Sometimes that's why communities form. Sometimes it's online because we can't deal with other people in real life. Sometimes it's a trusted friend that you actually see on a daily basis. You have to find what will work for you, find what makes you feel that you can do this. So it's going to be different for each person. Try to identify what will work for you and then do that. I don't want to force you to suddenly make online friends because if you don't want to, that's okay. I don't particularly like doing that, but that's how online reading communities are formed and writing communities are formed, just from people finding what they can do for each other and help each other with, and the doubt can still remain. It will still be there forever. It's not gonna go away, but at least you can find someone who can help you. If it's a skill thing, they can point you toward a class. If it's a research thing, they can point you toward people who know something, or just find what will give you motivation.
You get an editor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. I am Christine Regular from a university student taking up English. So, have you ever felt suffocated or at the extreme point frustrated in writing, especially if people expect you to produce this kind of work that is something that you do not like, but this is something that they expect from you and what the people needs. For example, for us, we are a student, academic student who we're supposed to produce analysis every week. So, have you ever felt that way? And what remedy do you think would suffice for that? Thank you.
Yes, I understand. I took communications course, had to write papers on each movie I saw, each book I read, everything, papers on everything. And then what happened was I stopped reading and watching things for fun for years. I just got tired of it. But during that time, I was telling myself, I'm building skills. I don't particularly like this thing, but the work that I'm doing is helping build the skill, and it remains to this day. So, to this day, when I write novels, I use outlines. I do a lot of research. It's something that you pick up from research papers and term papers, and you didn't. I don't know if anyone liked doing that when they were working on it, but it helps. It helps build skills. So just tap it lang.
I wrote copy, so it's like, that's my life. I wrote stuff for banks, for hotels, for Jepa San Miguel, and everything. So, but I always thought that it as an opportunity. I mean, I don't even like all the books that I read. Some books I read because I have to go through them. I think it's also important, especially for kids now, to understand that sometimes, although I tell my students that the best way you can derive, the best way to derive benefits from a book is to read only for pleasure. If you read for self-enhancement, if you read for knowledge, sometimes iba yung effect niya. But on the other hand, it's also important that you do things not only for your pleasure, because that's not life. A lot of things in life has to be gone through, has to be done, even if you don't like to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, 1,000,000% yes. I mean, both in my corporate life and my writing life. In corporate, which I was there for 9-10 years, Unilever, Johnson & Johnson. I mean, how fun is it to write about feminine napkins and bareta and detergents and bus? Woohoo! I mean, it's like, I mean, it drains your soul, but you have to do it. I always tell my kids, if you're going to do it, you better do it 1,000,000,000%. Diba? Parang gagawin mo lang, galingan mo na, diba? So, it might kill you a little bit inside, but at least maganda yung work at the end of the day. As far as writing or feeling the pressure to write something, absolutely, because in between this book here and that book there was a book here that will never see the light of day because it was never published, because no one wanted it. And in between that gap, I experienced tremendous pressure because in the few times that I would venture out to social media na alam natin, sabi ko, hindi ko ma-type, di ba? Everybody was asking, when's your next book? When's your next book? When's your next book? I don't know what my next book is. So, yeah, so there was that pressure because there was a, 6-7 year gap between books, because in between these books was a book that got rejected because no one wanted it, right? So, yeah, shit happens. Yan ang life, you know, so as Mina said, kapit lang. And then I'm sure that's the next question. After this book, what's the next book? What's the next book? So, don't ask, okay?
So we're down to our last minute. I'm sorry we can't take any more questions, but I'd like for our panelists to probably just give a last word for the many, many young wannabe authors here who might want to be like you. And I see that you've inspired a lot of them already. Perhaps a last word from you guys.
If you didn't see the last slide that I put up, it's more, let me just recap that. It's okay to be an author. It's okay to be an author. It's okay to sometimes not be an author and do other things. You can take breaks. You can participate in communities. But I guess my final message there is if you're going to participate in a community, try to be helpful. Try to be positive. Sometimes it's not about what you need. Sometimes it's what you can offer that other people need, and then that helps. That will help you eventually. Maybe not immediately, but it will.
Last week I was with the National Artist for Literature, Rio Almario, or Rio Alma, and I asked him, "Are you happy with the state of literature today?" And he said no. not his answer. He said, no, because right now I'm concerned with literacy. And I think that the future writers or readers, but I think we should all rally the literacy campaign of the government. I think that we should be, because the success of our books, the success of literature in the Philippines are ultimately dependent on readers. And apparently, we have a big problem in the far-flung provinces. It's not so much because they don't want to read, but they don't have the skills to even survive a book. So I think we should focus on spreading the love and joy of reading as writers. I think the role of the writer, more than anything else, is to cultivate the love and joy for reading.
Okay. My advice to aspiring writers is advice that I wish I had known, and it's still advice that I have to remind myself of. Is writing is tough because now you're shifting from a role of being by yourself, your most intimate thoughts, putting yourself out there and letting other people read it, right? You never write so that it will just live on the page. You write with that secret hope, whether you admit it to yourself or not, that someone will read your work and love it as much as you do. But the truth is, not everybody will love your work as much as you do. You will have good reviews, you will have great reviews, and you will have terrible reviews. People who seem na parang sole purpose in life nila is to hate on you. Haters be haters. But you cannot let other people's, you cannot let their opinions define you. Because the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? You're probably not as great as your biggest fan will tell you are, but you're also probably not as shitty as your biggest hater will tell you, right? So your compass has to be set towards yourself and not swinging left to right in the opinions of others. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. May I just invite you to go outside and check out our panelists' books, and they can be around ever to sign them for you. Thank you for coming to this panel, everybody. Have a good afternoon.